From complicated science to a simple, easy-to-use app for patients. Part 1, number 1580, VPT 115, March 24, 2026, Gerald C. EclaireMD Foundation, Category Stroke, CVD, Dementia. Introduction. From the early 1970s through the late 1970s, I studied both solid mechanics and artificial intelligence at MIT. Over the past 5 decades, I have had the rare opportunity to work in and observe the evolution of two very different scientific and engineering domains, solid mechanics and various engineering applications using artificial intelligence. My academic training in solid and fluid mechanics with computer science began in the late 1960s and early 1970s at the University of Iowa and continued in the 1970s at MIT. My work included biomechanics research on interactions between external forces from automatics weapons and biological tissues such as bones, tendons, and muscles, followed by exposure to dynamic plasticity, fracture mechanics, and viscoplasticity for engineering applications. Later, I spent more than 3 decades applying both artificial intelligence and engineering mechanics to a wide range of engineering applications, including mechanical and structural design in aeronautics, aerospace, submarines, nuclear power, and architectural engineering. I also worked on computer hardware and semiconductor chip physical design software, including multi-million transistor placement and electrical wiring routing algorithms. These structural architectures resemble the organization of human brain neurons and neural pathways, conceptually linking traditional engineering systems with modern neuroscience. This was followed by an additional 9 years, from 2001 to 2009, developing a customized medical AI system for my personal health monitoring and biomedical research. These parallel experiences have allowed me to directly witness the contrasting pace of advancement between traditional theoretical engineering disciplines and modern computational sciences. In solid mechanics, the period from approximately 1950 to 1985 produced several fundamental theoretical pillars, including plasticity theory, fracture mechanics, viscoelasticity, and viscoplasticity. I learned dynamic plasticity and viscoplasticity from my MIT advisor, Professor Norman Jones, during 1972 to 1976. These frameworks provided engineers with powerful tools to describe irreversible deformation, time-dependent material behavior, and failure mechanisms during the past decade. From 2017 through 2026, I have applied both viscoplasticity and geometric topology to biomedical research, particularly to the study of human soft tissues and organs in physiology and pathology. This work focuses on dynamic biomedical system behavior across time, rather than medical imaging field. During this period, I have written more than 1,000 medical research papers using this viscoplastopology framework. VPT model. After viscoplasticity was introduced into university curricula around the mid-1980s, the field continued to progress steadily, primarily through refinement, extension, and broader application of existing theoretical principles rather than entirely new governing laws. Important developments have included improved experimental methods, more accurate constitutive modeling, and expanded applications to advanced materials, including composite structures used in modern aircraft such as the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. These advances largely build upon previously established material viscoplastic behavior models, thermodynamic principles, and continuum mechanics frameworks. Under a strict definition of scientific breakthrough, relatively few entirely new theoretical pillars comparable to elasticity, plasticity, or viscoplasticity emerged in solid mechanics during the past 4 decades. In contrast, artificial intelligence has undergone multiple paradigm shifts during the same time period. When I studied AI courses under Professor Patrick Winston at MIT in 1970-1973, the AI field focused primarily on symbolic reasoning and rule-based logic. Since then, AI has progressed through statistical learning theory, neural networks, deep learning architectures, and most recently transformer-based large language models. Each transition introduced not only improved performance but also fundamentally different conceptual frameworks for representing knowledge and extracting patterns from data. Despite impressive progress, AI still faces limitations, including pattern repetition rather than true understanding, limited long-term knowledge accumulation, and sensitivity to instruction structure. These AI-related limitations arise from computational architecture, algorithm design, training data structure, and system constraints, including those influenced by economic or political considerations. At the same time, powerful driving forces continue to accelerate AI development. Computing power continues to expand rapidly. Large-scale datasets have become widely available. Industrial demand and societal interest provide strong motivation for continued advancement. These factors form a powerful feedback loop that promotes innovation. This contrast does not diminish the importance of classical engineering mechanics. On the contrary, the durability of its theoretical foundation demonstrates both depth and universality. Conservation laws, solid mechanics, fluid dynamics, thermodynamics, and constitutive modeling frameworks remain highly effective for describing complex material behavior today, including biomedical systems such as soft tissues, organs, and disease processes, which I have continuously studied, recorded, and contributed over the past 17 years. The relative stability of these core theories suggests that future progress may come from extending physics and engineering mechanics concepts beyond traditional material deformation problems towards system-level applications involving long-term trajectory evolution, irreversible processes, and complex interacting biomarker understanding and various mortality disease variables. My current research follows this direction by combining viscoplastic concepts with topology, longitudinal data analysis, trajectory analysis together with snapshot observations, and artificial intelligence tools to explore complex biomedical systems. Innovation often arises not only from inventing new equations, but also from applying existing mathematical and physical intuition to new domains where dynamic behavior remains insufficiently understood. Such as physiology, pathology, psychology, and human health systems. My accumulated real-life experience across multiple academic disciplines has enriched my understanding of these research subjects. My background includes solid mechanics, artificial intelligence, engineering practice, and biomedical research. These experiences were obtained not only from academic study but also from decades of practical problem-solving in real systems. This combination of theory and real-life application allows interpretation of complex biomedical systems from a broader scientific perspective. Compared with traditional single-discipline training, multidisciplinary experience provides a more integrated understanding of system behavior, particularly for problems involving structure, stress, time-dependent change, path sensitivity, and accumulated damage over long period. TSI Risk Warning App from complex science to a simple daily tool for patients. Following this introduction, I want to describe a patient-oriented TSI triggering sensitivity index health warning app, designed for ordinary people to easily monitor daily risk signals related to stroke, cardiovascular diseases (CVD), and dementia. Originally, I defined the TSI model into forms: TSI2 equals SBP dBP 45 asterisk SBP 120 asterisk amplification factor. C3 equals SBP dBP over 45 asterisk SBP over 120 asterisk glucose over 120 asterisk amplification factor. In this formulation, glucose represents long-term vascular damage associated with diabetes, such as vascular calcification, etc. Pulse pressure SBP dBP reflects vascular wall elasticity, while SBP represents both chronic and acute blood pressure load applied to the vascular system. The amplification factor in above two equations depends on individual health history, particularly diabetes duration and severity. For example, 120 for 35 years of diabetes, 110 for 20 years, and 100 for 5 years, to unify the model for both diabetic and non-diabetic users. A default glucose value of 120 can be applied when glucose data is not available. Therefore, the unified equation becomes TSI equals SBP dBP 45 asterisk SBP 120 asterisk glucose over 120 asterisk amplification factor, where glucose equals 120 until measured glucose data becomes available. In other words, 120 milligrams DL is used as the default value for the glucose variable. This equation simplification idea was inspired this morning by remembering that my advisor, Professor Jones, experienced several cardiovascular episodes despite having no diagnosis of diabetes. The purpose of using an amplification factor of about 100 to 120 is to scale the final TSI values into a range of approximately 70 to 120, instead of a narrow range between 0.8 and 1.2. Values close to 1.0 do not create a strong intuitive warning signal, whereas a wider numerical range allows the human brain to more easily perceive differences. Thresholds such as 90, 100, and 110 are also consistent with familiar medical reference values, such as blood pressure around 120 mmHg and glucose around 100 mg/dl. My research experience across engineering mechanics, artificial intelligence, topology, stochastic probability, business management, psychology, and biomedical systems has shown that complex models should ultimately be simplified so that ordinary people can understand and apply them in daily health management. The TSI concept follows this engineering philosophy. Viscoplastic theory describes how damage accumulates gradually when biological tissues are subjected to repeated stress over time. Topology indicates direction of change and emphasizes continuity and trajectory, showing that system behavior should be evaluated across time rather than from a single isolated measurement. Artificial intelligence provides fast and efficient tools for linguistic refinement and for identifying focused patterns within large datasets. When these scientific perspectives are combined, complex biomedical system behavior can be represented using a small number of key variables that capture essential dynamic characteristics of health conditions. A useful comparison is Newton's law of motion. F equals m asterisk O with two input variables and one arithmetic operation of multiplication. Similarly, the TSI equation, TSI equals pp asterisk SBP asterisk glucose, uses three interacting input variables through multiplication. Both equations demonstrate that complex system behavior can be represented using a simple arithmetic structure that combines interrelated and mutually influencing input variables. The final result is a simple app interface. The user only needs to enter three daily measurements: SBP systolic blood pressure, DBP diastolic blood pressure, glucose. After pressing the calculate button, the app produces a TSI value immediately, together with an easy-to-understand interpretation. C90 low risk, C90 to 99 still oct, C100 to 109 watch out. TSI greater than equals 110 risky. Behind this simple interface lies 50 years of accumulated scientific study and working experience in mathematics, engineering, artificial intelligence, and 17 years of biomedical study and research. However, the user does not need to understand viscoplastic theory, topology, semiconductor chips, or algorithms. The user only needs a simple daily tool that provides early warning signals related to risk level of stroke, cardiovascular disease, and dementia risk. Approximately 80% to 90% about 85% of stroke cases, 70% to 80% about 75% of heart disease cases, and 40% to 50% about 45% of dementia cases are associated with metabolic disorders, including obesity, diabetes, hypertension, and dyslipidemia. Therefore, a simple, easy-to-use, and freely available mobile app on the Apple App Store on an iPhone can serve as an effective early warning tool for major mortality diseases worldwide. This app is not intended to replace routine physician checkups or professional clinical evaluation of health conditions, however. It may help individuals better understand daily health status and potential risk trends. The more information people have to understand their body and health conditions, the better their long-term health outcomes may become. This app represents one of the practical outcomes derived from more than 1,600 medical research papers related to mortality diseases associated with metabolic disorders. This is part 1.